What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing day 2, that's rounds 2 and 3 of this 2025 NFL mock draft with trades. We did round 1 already. We're going to be doing a quick little recap, but you might want to just experience it live in the first round with that own video that was posted yesterday. But I do want to preface, as the video starts, maybe a little bit sooner than I did because some people didn't get it, but we are actually testing out a theory. And the theory is, what if the quarterbacks are not viewed at the same way that people are looking at them right now as like top 5 selections? What if it is kind of like 22 where we thought they were going to be top 5 selections and then we only get one dude in the first, or maybe a couple, as we'll see when we go back over. And then from there on, we do see them fall a bit more because the confidence is just not there from the NFL. I'm not saying this is exactly what will happen, but I do want to be able to test this theory out because it is a very possible option. It is realistic. There is more than 1 out of a billion alternate universes that this will happen. So I think it's fun for us to test this theory out. It's something I really wanted to do. It was pretty daunting, but the first round ended up going really damn well, in my opinion. I will say, we'll go over it, but the Raiders, I had them signing Sam Darnold. That's the reason why I didn't really consider them, but we'll get it going. But starting out, you guys can read. I'm just going to talk about the trades primarily, or maybe some big takeaways. We had New England have a small little trade swap with the Jaguars. Bottom line, I thought that Mason Graham was way too good to be able to pass up the opportunity. I wanted to trade back with Jacksonville and trade back with New England. And for New England, my goal was getting Tetairoa McMillan or an offensive lineman. And I knew if I traded past the Raiders, I probably was looking more at Tetairoa McMillan. And so I thought it was a great opportunity for the Jaguars and the Patriots to have a mutually beneficial agreement to where I would see the Jets potentially jumping up for Mason Graham. You could talk about the Raiders trying to move up for guys, but there were plenty of teams where I could have negotiated a much larger settlement and ended up having a solid outcome for the Patriots, but not really a good one for the Jaguars, because I don't think anybody would have been worth trading for at pick number 5. So I did what was best for both organizations and had that be the move. Of course, as I'm talking about Tom Telesco being a guy who's been even willing to move up in the first for a running back, the motherfucker gets fired. Like, I don't know what's up with that. I think it was a horrible firing. I thought he's actually done a pretty solid job drafting probably the best tight end that we've ever seen. But regardless, I do think with a new organization coming in, it still is, like most organizations, either get their QB or they end up getting a relatively safer position. Ashton Jeanty behind that offensive line is going to be a massive asset to whoever is going to be there. And again, I want to emphasize that we had Sam Darnold get signed in this situation. Maybe he loves the idea of being under Tom Brady. So we'll talk about that when the time comes, but that's going to be basically why they ended up going Ashton Jeanty there. Of course, we had some picks going on. We had Dallas do a little bit of a trade down so that the Colts could jump the Dolphins for Malachi Starks. I normally go tight end for the Colts, but I wanted to test out a different theory this time. Of course, via that trade down, the Cowboys still got their star running back there in Amari Hampton, who I love to death. If Ashton Jeanty did not have 8 fumbles over the past 2 years, granted, if he were any other running back that had 8 fumbles, he'd be graded lower. I'm actually very, very generous with Amari Hampton, but just the bottom line, 8 fumbles over 2 years, not necessarily the best thing on planet Earth. So it was just a slight knockdown, and I mean, hell, being number 7 overall on my board is still absolutely ludicrous as it is. And Amari Hampton is a super stud. But we had Cincinnati trade back, and the Los Angeles Rams jump the Seattle Seahawks to get Arianti Ursary and basically kind of rob the Seahawks of a dream pick there. They still ended up getting a good one, though. Via that trade back, we had Tyler Booker go to the Bengals, and then we actually ended up having Green Bay trade back with Washington, so Washington could end up securing their weapon there in Luther Burden, Siobhan Revell. Via that trade back for Green Bay, a lot of people wanted to push back on the injury side of things, maybe wanted to go Darian Porter. I'd totally respect it if that's the route you want to go. I technically have Darian Porter higher, but I just thought realistically people love Siobhan Revell to the point where I wanted to check my own board and go with something that people thought was far more likely. So I'm glad that the consensus right now in the chat or in the comment section is a little bit more on what I think is best rather than what the perceived consensus is. There we go. English. Then we had Minnesota trade back, and I thought, well, Shedeur Sanders still on the board. We had a little bit of a bidding war between New York Giants as well as the Tennessee Titans. And Well, ended up having the Titans get to move up, and what was so special about that was that Shedeur Sanders gets to be paired back up with Travis Hunter. That's what was super fun for me to see. Like, I think Shedeur Sanders is the best fit there with Brian Callahan. You know, Brian Callahan worked with Joe Burrow, similar archetype of player, not talent level, but archetype. And so they were able to bring the Colorado boys back together. And finally, Detroit not having a bunch of really good options. And honestly, I thought that this was just a prime opportunity to have a team that's a little bit more tackle hungry move here and to get better value. Had the Patriots trade up and select Josh Connerly at 32, leaving us here at pick 33 for the Cleveland Browns. Below my face is my board. I know it's going to drive a lot of people crazy. It's a completely honest board, and you know, a lot of people who will show their board to the public don't have like the necessary stones or stupidity to be completely honest and be willing to be completely wrong. But for me, I owe you guys honesty over, you know, comfortability. I have it there just so you understand what I think, and I try to base my own draft based off of a little bit of a twist from my board into the consensus, but I still want to give you guys a product that is representative of what actually could happen. You know, there's always going to be twists and turns in the mock draft realm, and the same thing with the real draft. And so I like to be able to put my own twist on it, but I'm not going to allow Braden Swinson, who I love to death and I think is a superstar, to be able to like totally throw something off and make it extremely unrealistic. Even though there's a theory right now that is making it relatively unrealistic, which is the quarterback slipping, I still think that it is well worth, you know, it's worth testing out a theory that is semi-realistic, not necessarily for something that's far lower probability, like someone who I love, like Braden Swinson, going in the top 10. But I picked number 33 for the Cleveland Browns. We have so far selected Abbott, Duel, Carter, and we're in a good spot. I mean, technically, you could have went Shamar Stewart here, and I'm going to be honest, I think Shamar Stewart is the most overrated player in this class. I love Shamar. He's the most ridiculous athlete that you've seen at 290 pounds. But the dude has zero polish. I mean, he has so many false steps, extremely, extremely raw, to the point where I think he's like, I'm just seeing people say he's a top 10 pick. And it's just like, man, if that is true, that scares the shit out of me. Because, I mean, athleticism and just build get you only so far. The NFL is a game of technique. And it really, I do not see that with Shamar Stewart. And I love Shamar Stewart. It's just, man, I'm also a realist on him too. And just compared to what people think of him versus what I do, like if you just told me, oh, what do you think of Shamar Stewart? Oh, I really like him. Great athlete, tons of potential. And then if you said, hey, what do you think about Shamar Stewart as a first round pick? I'm like, not there. So it's a different threshold. So I want to put that out there. Wouldn't take him for the Browns in the first place, but the position I want to go for the Browns is offensive line. I think having a versatile offensive lineman like Jonas Savania is going to be super valuable. He's played on both left and right tackle, as well as some guard reps as well. Extremely versatile, very athletic, a great anchor actually for his size, and still polishing up. But honestly, it is an upgrade. And I think that flexibility is something that is very valuable, especially on a team like the Browns that there's a lot of uncertainty at that tackle position. At number 34 for the Giants, we went Will Johnson there in the first, but here's the caveat. We traded for Will Levis. Yes, that is correct. We ended up sending our pick to Tennessee for Will Levis. It is a much later pick, so I'm going to go down here to the Titans. We ended up sending, I think it was 153 and 217 for 176 and Will Levis. So essentially, we basically moved up there. And I think it's worth it. If you don't get to have your quarterback, I think that not overspending is super key. Will Levis has a ton of untapped potential. Brian Dable has worked with guys who not necessarily the best processors coming into the league. Like Josh Allen was a little bit of a wild cannon, and he worked really well with him. And I still think that there's a lot of hope for Will Levis, and I'd really love for Brian Dable to get his hands on him and be able to work with him for a year. And then you can see the potential there. I don't know about Joe Shane for the long run, but I really still have a ton of faith there in Brian Dable. So regardless, you got your quarterback in Will Levis. You also have your cornerback in Will Johnson. So at this point, a couple other routes you could go. I personally think you could get someone next to Dexter Lawrence at this point. Getting someone like Walter Nolan adds to the pass rushing group, and I honestly really love it. Like you do have, he actually went to SMU too, so that's why it's embarrassing. I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. I think he's Elijah Chapman. He actually had some really good games this year, so maybe that's not going to be the route I really press forward. But Walter Nolan certainly on the table. But I also think getting a boundary receiver like Eli Almainer, not a bad opportunity here to be able to get someone who could really complement Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. I know you have guys there, but at the same time, do you really have guys outside of those two that you really trust? I mean, you could end up going after a right tackle like Blake Miller. I think it's a pretty damn early to do so. You could trade back here. You got some good edge rushers. You got some good talent. You got Jahdae Barron on the board. But honestly, I really do like the idea of going after a weapon here. And you got yourself your, like, pretty much 3 down every single time you want to throw the ball kind of guy in Malik Neighbors. You got your short range after the catch guy. It really is down to Io Maynor and Jaden Higgins. I love Higgins. I love him to death. I mean, where's he at on my board? Jaden Higgins, Donde is stud. He's number 34. So I think it fits perfectly. He's a good blocker as well, 6'4", 215. It's an archetype of receiver that you do not have consistently on your squad right now. So I'm actually going to take him. It's going to be a little bit of a dark horse, but right now you have your quarterback, you have your corner, and now you have your top weapon here in Jaden Higgins to complement Malik Neighbors. And also his blocking will help out in the offensive run game as well, which is always a big plus. At pick number 35 for the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of really good talent here. Like, really good. I'm looking at Jahdae Barron and thinking he's a perfect replacement for Byron Murphy. I mean, just the IQ is through the roof. But you also have so many really good corners in this class. I'm having Ben Morrison return, by the way, that I don't feel the need to kind of press the issue. Like, interior offensive line, we could go someone like Marcus Bowe, Donovan Jaxson. I think that'd be a good move. To be fair, I think one of them is going at that next pick for the Jaguars. And so it really is defense, interior, offensive line. And if you guys are going to have a rookie back there, which assuming because I said that Sam Darnold goes to the Raiders, that you will, well, air quotes rookie, right? JJ McCarthy. I think you need to protect him as much as possible. We're going to go Donovan Jaxson here and put him back to guard. And also, if issues pop up, you can end up putting him out there at tackle because he's been playing left tackle a bit this year. And number 36 for the Jaguars would have been my dream pick for him. But in the first round, we ended up going Mason Graham. And I still think this team needs a boundary corner, and I think that's where I'm going to go. Interior offensive line is something I could try to pick up in the third round, but it is going to be a lot higher of a risk. And I love Darian Porter. I personally love Azariah Thomas. To be fair, he's already had experience in the state of Florida at Florida State. He is ridiculously talented. He's going to make some money there at Mobile, in my opinion. I'm super excited to see him in person. We're going to go Azariah Thomas here and keep him there in Florida, sending him to Jacksonville, pairing up with Mason Graham, creating an extremely dynamic duo. At number 37 for the Raiders, we got Genty in the first, but not on top of that. We actually signed Sam Darnold. I do want to continue mentioning that. So I think actually this is a good spot for another corner. Wide receiver is a move I make quite often, but I also want to keep things a little bit more balanced. Telesco's gone. AP is gone. So God only knows who your front office is going to be, but Darian Porter's fantastic. Jahdae Barron is as well, but I would prefer someone who's going to be 6'4", 200 pounds, and a little bit more of a projectable guy to the boundary than Jahdae Barron. And I love Jahdae Barron to death. At number 38 for the Detroit Lions, I do think this is the prime opportunity to, you definitely could trade back again, but it's starting to get a little bit ridiculous. I think this is where they would take a shot on a project edge like Shamar Stewart and just kind of call it a day. It's nothing crazy, but he is someone who should be picked around this range, even if I don't agree with it. And so that's exactly what I try to do with all my picks. It's like I'm going to try to blend, even if I don't agree, something that's going to be a little bit more realistic. At number 39 for the Bears, their first round selection was Kelvin Banks, who could kick into guard if need be in the short run if you start having some success there at tackle. But regardless, I'm going to look at defensive interior as well as edge rusher in this round. And I mean, you guys are spoiled for choice, I would say. I don't know why I keep clicking on safety. That's a stupid move. But I'm looking at Walter Nolan here, TJ Sanders, Omar Norman Lott. Those are like my favorite guys right now. Dark horse is DeMonte Capehart. But I mean, Walter Nolan is the guy who has the highest probability of going in this range. I'm going to select him here out of Mississippi. He's had a fantastic year. I mean, like a fantastic year. I don't think it's as translatable as maybe the numbers suggest, but I do think that if you're number 2 defensive interior, I think he's going to do just a fine job. At number 40 for the New Orleans Saints, first round, Michael Williams. And yeah, we'll see what the coaching staff is when they come in. It might shift their overall value system, but I do think Io Maynor is a possible. I think we have a good amount of draft capital as well. I think my best player available has served this team very well many times. I will say, though, Jahdae Barron, as much as I want to take him, it's kind of an Alontae Taylor kind of player. and that's still a damn good player. But I do think a dark horse pick here is Harold Fannin, and he is an extremely talented tight end. I mean, 15.55 as a tight end is ludicrous. And he's been fantastic all year long, dominant even in games like versus Penn State. He was absolutely electric. And I do think that this is a team that is willing to spend on someone like Harold Fannin here. You could try to trade back to do it, but I also could see the Jets being a dark horse team in the Harold Fannin sweepstakes. Same thing with the Niners. So we're going to go after Harold Fannin and just call it a day. At 41 for the Chicago Bears, could also trade back here based on the quantity of excellent talent on the board. But I do think you do want to get your option of edge rushers. To be fair, I do feel really comfortable with moving back for the Bears. A lot of really good players. You got Jahdae Barron here. For a team like the Jets, I think there'll be prime market for Jahdae Barron. I do think certain teams should be getting excited. Oh, man. There's not many teams that are within striking range for Jahdae Barron, is there? You could even go with it for the Bears to play that free spot. I do say that you could see a team like the Dolphins getting aggressive to move up for their top safety and jump their division rival in the Jets because they got screwed out of a safety the last time. I mean, we ended up going after defensive interior here with Tyleik Williams, but I absolutely adore, and I mean adore, where's he at? Nick Emmanwori. I mean, this dude is just a beast. 6'4", 230 pounds, or 6'3", 230, and he flies at 4'3", maybe even up there to the 4'2" range. Like, he is ridiculous. Ball skills through the roof. I easily could see him being a first-round pick. And with the Jets there, I really do think that since I took offensive line, probably defensive back would be my next position to target outside of defensive interior. And I do think Nick Emmanwori is that level of player. And especially with 2 third-round picks, I do think this is actually a realistic move for the Dolphins to be able to repivot the picks that they do have. So like 98, but technically they could try to do a little bit of a pick swappage here with the Bears. I mean, I'm trying to look at how this could end up being a net positive for you guys. Like 155, 146, technically you could try to flip those. Outside of that, I do think that it's like, I feel like this would be a relatively fair trade overall. The Bears do need more quantity of picks than quality. Maybe you guys could end up doing 99 in that case just to, get a little bit more of the sizzle on the steak there. We're going to do that right there. The Dolphins end up moving up and jumping the Jets for someone who can absolutely haunt the middle of the field there in Nick Emmanwori. So you guys ended up getting Tyleik Williams and Nick Emmanwori. I think that's a nasty 1-2 punch. Someone to be pressuring up the middle and another one to be taking advantage of that pressure on the backside. Pick number 42, back with the New York Jets. I think that you still could go Jahdae Barron and convert him to safety at this point. Our first pick was Josh Simmons, flexing him to right tackle, even potentially left. It just depends on what you want to do with Olu Fashanu. But tight end is technically a dark horse pick. Gunnar Helm has surprised me a lot more than I expected. His grade is not official yet, but while watching edge rushers, he actually does a pretty good job. I do have Ben Morrison returning in this, but I will say, I still don't understand why they don't have all these guys in here because I have some corners here. David Igbenogson going to be falling. I just know based on his recent performance, he's not worth it. But Jamari Harris, DJ McKinney, I'm going to keep DJ McKinney probably out as long as possible in this just because I don't think that he'll come out. Like, usually these Colorado guys are flexing 24/7 that they're coming out in the draft, and I haven't heard that from him. Regardless, Jahdae Barron would be a good defensive back to have, a really good one. But I do think a true defensive interior too is just as valuable. And I think this team's willing to roll the dice on someone who I have as my second interior defensive lineman in the entire class, and that's Omar Norman Lott. Omar Norman Lott is just a freak. I mean, just an unbelievable athlete. Ridiculous explosiveness off the line. He's still polishing up because he hasn't even played, I think, 600 reps on his career or just above 600 reps on his career there over the past 3 years. But I think this guy is special, really special. And if you get to combine him with Quinn Williams as a mentor, he's going to make some money in Mobile as well. Omar Norman Lott's going to go off. And number 43 for the San Francisco 49ers, first round pick was Will Campbell. Here in round number 2, TJ Sanders is very, very, very welcoming to me. But I also think the edge rushers are just too good to pass on. This team needs a legitimate true edge too. And you got JT Tuimoloau here. It's just so hard for me to say no. As much as I love Braden Swinson, having a legitimate 260 to 270 pound Ohio State edge who's just polished and damn good. It's just so hard to pass on that, especially at 43 overall. I'm a huge fan of JT Tuimoloau. He's my number 28 player on my board, and I think he's just a great fit there for San Francisco. I mean, you combine him with Will Campbell, and you have a really good solidified offensive and defensive line group. At number 44 for the Dallas Cowboys, TJ Sanders is here. It's just impossible to say no. First round pick was Amari in Hampton. Jahdae Barron's still very intriguing, but you just can't pass on the talent of TJ Sanders. I love TJ. Where's he at on my board? I kind of forgot where I put TJ Sanders, but he's at number 64. Really good player. And there's some players on there who I'm still waiting to hear go back to school who I think will. So he's going to be climbing up the board even more. And number 45 for the Colts, I mean, technically could have actually went Jahdae Barron here instead of trading up for Malachi Starks, but you know, it is what it is. We rolled the dice and we ended up getting the player that we really thought was really good. And honestly, you can't get mad at taking really damn good players. I do think edge number 2 is a position you should be focusing on. I really do. And you got Princey Umamiel in here. You got Jack Sawyer. But, I mean, technically, I think Braden Swinson's right up your alley. This guy's a master technician, over 20% pass rush win rate. And this is versus top-end tackles like Caden Proctor. Like, Caden Proctor's going to be a top 5 to 10 pick next year. This dude was having one of the best chess matches that I've seen of the entire year. It was straight cinema of Swinson versus Proctor, where he'd have the quick win and Proctor would use the length and strength to be able to keep him away from the sack. It was honestly awesome to see. So keep that in mind as well. And with so many edges in this class, I do think this is now the prime opportunity to trade back, because I'm seeing 2 key places here that a lot of teams should be wanting to go, and that's Io Maynor and Barron. And looking at teams that could definitely use that, I might even look at the Bengals, and they might just say, screw it, we're going to go after Jahdae Barron. But other teams of note, I mean, technically, I would look at the Broncos. There also are the running backs on the board as well, but I don't think that they are in as much of a demand as maybe what I'd like to say. But on top of that, man, I mean, this is just another spot where it's a little bit barren, no pun intended, for teams to move up. Like, I just don't really see the actual, like, need to move up for Io Maynor. Like, at that rate, the Steelers could get extremely excited about it, but I don't see it as, like, that pressing of an issue. The Bills could try to leverage their 2 second-round picks, to be fair, to move up for one of these guys. And then you could technically... Actually, I don't mind that at all. Io Maynor almost perfectly complements Keon Coleman, because he actually has pretty solid... Like, he's not necessarily the best guy for deep speed, but he's someone who toasted Travis Hunter for like 150 yards. It was ridiculous. He had like a 300-yard game that game, but really solid after the catch, really good route runner. I think he complements your guys' receiving core very well. You got Jalen Royals here as well, but I actually like that idea. I know that you guys have been asking for this as well. A lot of people have said, hey, like, why don't you leverage the 2 second-round picks? And I think it's actually brilliant, because you guys are going to be moving up. And technically the Colts are going to be moving back, but you guys are just reshifting your draft capital. I'm curious to see. Okay. Well, okay. Gotcha. So it's saying this is actually a solid trade coming from both sides of the equation. So 81-50, 60-61. Technically you could try to, you know, finagle some stuff. Like, I'll send pick like 203 for 187 or something like that. But regardless, I'm happy with this. And that way the Colts get to be able to have 2 impact players. I just didn't see the value being proper for them. The Bills, I think that you guys should be spreading it out a little bit more. You got KG there in the first, and we're going to go Alec Io Maynor here in this. Oh man, Jahdae Barron is such a good pick. But also 3rd round, I feel comfortable with the safeties too. You got Io Maynor, you got the edges here. I'm going to go Io Maynor though. That's the real guy I wanted to move up for. I think he can work really well there with Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, whoever the hell else you want to put in that receiving room. I think Io Maynor is a really good player, and I do think that there are a lot of contenders here to take up Io Maynor. At number 46 for the Falcons, I think Jahdae Barron almost is a can't pass on at the moment. As much as I love the other corners in the class, sometimes you just got to go BPA. We end up going after James Pierce in the first. We're going to go after Jahdae Barron here in the second. At 47 for the Arizona Cardinals, we ended up going after Nick Scorton there in the first. Got some pushback on that, and that's okay. I love you guys for that. You guys, my Cardinals fans are very vocal, and you know that's something that I do love to death. Like, you guys really do actually care about the content I put out, and I always say be a dick, just don't be a dick about it. I feel like this is one of the teams that I have the hardest time drafting for, if I'm just going to be completely brutally honest. I do think interior offensive line or tackle, like you could go after Marcus Bowe here and just use a real quality offensive lineman. And to be fair, your GM is really good at moving down the board. And I don't see Marcus Bowe getting taken for a hot second. Like, he could be taken right here at 51, but then you can end up with Tate Ratledge. I feel pretty confident with that. Is there any other player that I think should be taken in this range? That's the question of the hour. And you got some really good players here. The edge rushers are just ridiculous. I'd almost double up at edge. Like, it's just that good of value. And with the Bears sitting there, are there any other teams that look for edge? I could see a small trade down here with Cincinnati. Cincinnati needs an edge. And in the first round, we ended up trading back and going after Tyler Booker. So they have extra draft capital. I don't mind that. I honestly don't, because they're going to be jumping the Bears then at that point, and just basically it's going to be a small fee. So jumping up 2 spots, I think that would take 124. And technically you could give something in return, like maybe 245. We could do 118 and for 151. I think that's fair as well. Like, I think that's actually pretty solid. You guys are moving up essentially 32 spots to jump back 2 and still probably get the same exact player that I'd get for him. So we're going to do that. The Bengals move up, and I think the Bengals need a technician. They have shown that they cannot develop edge talent. So you want to get someone who is going to be a little bit more of a technician. That's going to be Princely Umanmielen, or it's going to be Braden Swinson. I think Umanmielen is going to have the higher likelihood of going first. So that's why I'm going to go after Princely Umanmielen. At number 48 for the Chicago Bears, we've gone after defensive interior as well as offensive linemen. Now, I still think running back could be a move the Bears go with. I mean, some really good ones on the board. But I do also think that we need to focus on a true edge too. As much as I really love Darrell Taylor, I think he should be in a rotation. And for that reason, I'm still looking at Braden Swinson here. And Braden Swinson actually does fit a similar profile, in my opinion, of that technician with some good motor. He's not the best athlete on planet Earth. I think that's his biggest issue, is that he's good in short space, but outside of the short space, I think he can certainly, like, Jalen Milroe exposed him. That's the bottom line. He exposes a lot of people, but we're actually going to go, oh man, I'm going to get crucified by the Bears fans for this, but that's okay. We can take the hit. We'll go with that. We got pick 99 in the equation as well, so I really do like that. I do think Braden Swinson will be a second round pick. People who I respect like him as a third or higher, which means that, I'm the lunatic. I know I'm a loony. I'm an absolute loony. I have him at number 3. I'm going to completely come out and say it's a completely honest take, but it's completely bullshit for the fact that he should not be there. But it's just, that's how much I love him. So, I mean, I'm just going to call it out as it is. I'm going to be honest to myself. If we're right, we're right. If we're wrong, let's learn why. That's my mentality whenever it comes to grading players. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to myself. I think he's probably one of the best, if not the best players in the class. He really is special to me. He's a master technician. Honestly, he's really smart and knows what's going on in the play. And, he goes up against the best of the best and gets unfazed. He's never been truly the guy there. But at the same time, like, that might just be because we weren't looking hard enough. So at number 49 for the Arizona Cardinals, we traded back and we still got Nick Scorton there. I think that interior defensive line at this point with Derek Harmon, kind of hard to say no. Just beef up the defensive line at this point. Sometimes you just got to go best player available. So we're going to go after best player available there with Derek Harmon. We traded back. Monty still got his draft capital, and you guys ended up getting your really good player. Fixing up the defense is just so valuable, especially even though you do need some offensive line help. It still is extremely valuable nonetheless. Pick number 50 for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to look primarily at corner here. God, man. Like, I've taken Jamari Harris to you guys a couple times, my number 36 player. I'm trying my best not to. Like, I'm trying my best to keep things relatively fresh for you guys on a consistent basis. It's tough. It's tough. We got Cam Williams here, who's, long-term goal is to be a tackle. That's just the thing. You guys ended up, bottom line, you can't really rely on the healthy right tackle. And I love Abe to death, but the dude just consistently is just not there. But I do think that a ball hawking safety like Xavier Watts could be a dark horse move for you. You could look for a future wide receiver. You guys have actually been able to do a pretty good job at being able to fill those when the need ends up arising. I still think that corner 2 is a good spot for you. And because of that, I will be trading back here. I think that's just, we have to. There's so many good edge rushers as well. And then interior offensive line, is there any team that probably is going to be lurking for one? I mean, I ended up talking about Marcus Bowe here to the Cardinals, but I technically could totally see him to the Texans. Are there any other teams looking for interior? Not necessarily. I mean, I don't see it. So don't really see much there. Damn, this is actually kind of crazy. But regardless, who else is worth moving up for? Remember, this is a live mock draft. This is where we get to think together in person. But there's top tier running backs as well. And I do see the Broncos right here, and Caleb Johnson's a hot commodity. Are there any other teams that are looking at a primary running back? Also, I do see the Broncos here. They could be someone who goes after a tight end or a wide receiver. I do think the Steelers should get a little aggressive. We're not going to get a corner here, but because I have Ben Morrison returning. But I do think this is the prime opportunity to jump a team like the Broncos who could be looking to take Jalen Royals. I think Jalen Royals is a stud. I really do. So I think it might be like pick 158 is the true value of this, but I think the Seahawks are going to get a little bit more greedy. So they're going to go pick 123. There's no way that they think that's just completely justified. 17 to 15 is pick 120. This is significantly less. So I do think that we can end up tossing 183 into the equation at the very minimum. You could put 174 if you so please, but I do not think it will affect the mock draft too much. But the Steelers got Cam Ward in the first. Let's continue developing our offense here with Jalen Royals, who I think is an unbelievable talent. I mean, this guy after the catch is some of the best in the whole entire country. 5.2% drop rate is really good. He upped from like 20% to 38.5. Last year, he was at 70% for contested catch rate. So just this year, it was a slow start, ending off hot before having a season-ending ankle injury. He'll be back there in Mobile, hopefully healthy to play and show everyone why he is so good. He might be in the 4.3s, if not the 4.2s. He's a sprinter, so I'm extremely excited to see him on the Steelers there with Cam Ward's arm strength. And number 51 for the Houston Texans, we took Emeka Egbuka there in the first round. We're going to go offensive line here. Defensive line, very possible. I do think that I'd want to go after Marcus Bowe at this point, though. Have that tackle versatility. I'd really like it. Friend of the show, Marcus Bowe, going at pick 51. At pick 52 for the Denver Broncos, I think we got to go running back at this point. I think it's the likely option. I love Cam Skadagbo, but I do think the more likely option is the younger, less carries, but also showed he can be a workhorse back there in Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. First round pick, we went Tyler Warren. Second round pick, we're going Caleb Johnson. At number 53 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, my favorite pick for him is Jihad Campbell in the first. Technically, you could wait for that edge in the second, but at the same time, there are no guarantees in this. I do think wide receiver is possible, but you guys have been saying Chris Godwin's a probable guy to come back. I do think getting another weapon in your secondary, probably a smart move as well. But you also could be looking at Jihad Campbell as a pure linebacker and allowing him to be flexible around the field, kind of using him as a Swiss Army knife. And I think that's actually a really cool idea. I think that as long as you have the vision of him having certain reps as an edge rusher, that would be good. But I also think this is a position where I don't feel very comfortable with the single pick. Maybe Xavier Watts here, but I mean, I don't really think that it's that pressing of an issue to go after a defensive back at this point. I really do like what the Buccaneers are doing. Personally, I think they're doing a great job, and you could go wide receiver here. I have Isaiah Bond returning in too. I always put that in the description. So if you guys are always wondering who's returning in these, they are in the description. But actually, no, I'm going to go Jermari Harris, cornerback out of Iowa. He's my number 36 player. Technically, there are other guys higher that will be dropping, but we're going to use Tony Grimes as a placeholder, but it's my number 36 player, Jermari Harris. And number 54, we have the Seattle Seahawks back on the board. You have a defensive coach, so I do think this pick should be defensive. We're going to look at defensive back here. You got Xavier Watts in the mix. Again, Ben Morrison returning. I did not want to take Jermari Harris again to you guys, but I do think there is the opportunity for, you got Denzel Burke, who ended up having a really solid game, but Davison Igbinosun definitely is a little bit more role specific, and I might want to trade back a bit more before I feel comfortable taking him. But he's somebody who is extremely physical, and when used properly, like deployed legitimately properly, few guys will be able to have the physical power that Igbinosun does. It's something I'm very much debating, because I do think it needs to be a defensive pick. I know some of y'all have been saying, hey, let's get another edge in the group, which, to be fair, there's so many good edge rushers at this spot, like really good ones. And I know you guys are willing to throw a curveball in. I'm going to go actually after an edge here. we'll take a shot on it. We're going to go Antoine Powell-Ryland. He might be the 201st player for Trevor Sikkema, but he's going to be my number 27 player on my board. This dude's fantastic. Speed to power through the roof. I mean, this is the first game I watched of him was versus Miami, and this dude ended up having such a good job off the bat. Another first-round tackle, Francisco Mauigoa, I think is his name, ended up on the first rep blowing this dude back, but he ended up just absolutely destroying the guy's anchor. Now, I do think he can work a little bit on his combinations to where he can get around the re-anchor of offensive tackles, but I mean, at 54, this dude surprised me so much, and a lot of VT fans were telling me, like, dude, do not sleep on this guy. I slept on him, and I take full responsibility. Granted, it's still pretty damn early in the draft season. I still think it was a great call out by y'all. At number 55, we got the Carolina Panthers. Ended up going after Jalen Walker in the first. Now, a lot of y'all have some good discussions there in the chat talking about the Frankie Louvu role, whether, Avero would actually want to continue using that. There's some good pointers out there, and I really appreciate you guys for being so passionate about your team. But looking at my next spot, I would be looking at defensive interior. The guys I'm looking at, Darius Alexander, DeMonte Capehart. Same with Alfred Collins. Daryl Jackson is returning. Don't know why they don't pull those guys out of the equation, but let's not get into it right now. It's beyond me. But I do think defensive back, like a true safety, like Xavier Watts, a legit ball hawk, not bad. And we'll see in the future, but I ended up buying myself a Panthers jersey. It's not a current player, but it's someone who I really like, which I actually got a really good discount on the jersey. I thought it was actually sick. One of my favorite Panthers players from the past 4 years. Extremely excited for that. You guys can feel free to guess who that is down in the comment section below, but bottom line, he's not on the team anymore, but he is somebody that was looked at very favorably as one of the top of his position, and maybe similar to what Xavier Watts is. Gotta stay hydrated. Free ASMR for you guys. At number 56 for the Green Bay Packers. In the first round, we ended up going Siobhan Ravel. Again, got some pushback talking about it should have been maybe going after Darian Porter, which if you really are that serious about it, you could switch him and Ravel and Porter, and it would not change my feelings at all. So I respect it. At this point for the Packers, though, I do think you need to go after an edge rusher or a 3-tech. Again, the 3-tech value is extremely lower than what the edge value is. And Jeff Hafley getting his guy, I am just such a sucker for it. You guys know I am. So I'm going to take every opportunity to go Donovan Zirawaku as possible, who formerly was coached by your defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. Number 57 for the Chargers. First round, Colson Loveland. Second round, could go running back, but I'm going to say screw it. You need interior offensive line help. You got Tate Ratledge here, who would be a really good get. But Gray Zabel is just such a hardball kind of guy. Imagine taking some dude who's like a monster from North Dakota State, former tackle as well, and actually just putting him as a mauler on the offensive line. There's a UNC guy who's like 290. I could totally see him being like an H-back for hardball, even though I know that you guys do a good job of that as it is. But teams love this dude as a center as well. And I like that flexibility a ton. I mean, he's had a really solid year. In total was at 7 pressures on the year, 6'6", 305, good movement skills. I have not watched him because I only watch players in all 22. Just going to put that out there. But, I still have a lot of people who I respect who love Gray Zabel. And I think this is worth where I want to take him. At 58 for the Commanders, we ended up going after Luther Burden via a trade up in the first round. Here in the second, you got corner, but again, I do think the value is a little bit diminished, a little bit. There are players who I really like. I love Dalen Everett, but honestly, Dalen Everett reminds me a lot of Mikey Sainristil in terms of the physicality, but I will say, I still want you guys to go edge. I know tackle as well is a big thing for a lot of you, and you got Trapilo, you got Miller. Those are the two guys who I really like. I also really like Jack Nelson. I've been trying to let him slip a little bit more in mock drafts just to reflect, because I don't think that people love him as much as I do. But I think edge value is ridiculous right now. It's just crazy right now. And I love Jack Sawyer, but I do think Tyler Barron has been far more impactful for his team over the past couple of years. Jack Sawyer is still developing, but he's a damn good player. He is a damn good player. Do not get me wrong. I would not shame you if you said, oh, go Jack Sawyer over Barron. But I do think Barron has the higher flashy level wins. And Barron's been a top 50 player. He was a top 50 player for me at the start of last year. And this year, I mean, assuming he would have continued with that same grade, he would have been as well. Still waiting on some Miami defense tape to give him his official grade, but I mean, the dude's fantastic. He is a really good player. But for the Baltimore Ravens, first round pick, we ended up going after Wyatt Milam, who just declared for the draft today. Love to see that. And at this point, you could go Jack Sawyer and just get someone who is a legit rock solid competitor. If you got pissed about taking Tyler Barron, I wouldn't mind Tyler Barron to the Ravens either. So let's fix those defensive and offensive lines respectively with proper value and go after a great value there with Jack Sawyer. At number 60 for the Indianapolis Colts, Kyle Kennard's here. It's an interesting choice because I think Kyle Kennard at his highest level does a really good job. I think that he does kind of have some processing issues, but when he knows it's a passing down, really good DPR. Really good. I think a boundary corner is still something you guys could totally target, but I do think tight end now is where I could feel comfortable with it. You got the Eagles here, technically the Chiefs as well, looking for tight ends. Gunnar Helm has had a really solid year. I mean, like, he's someone who I was very much against relatively compared to where his draft stock is. I have not given him an official grade yet, but just watching this guy blocking against, like, I don't understand this grade. I mean, it's actually his pass blocking that I really like. But this guy's been uber reliable. And, it might be like, damn, we could have gotten Eamon Warry as well as Warren. Instead, we got Starks and Helm. I get that. But I also think Gunnar Helm is a really good tight end. And it's something that you should be happy to have on your squad and not so lowering your head and kind of feeling like, damn. At number 61, we got Cam Scatabo on the board. And I do want to see if there's a team that is in need of running back that might want to move up for this. I'm kind of feeling the Browns. I mean, we also do have Jalen Milroe still on the board. I'm testing the theory that these guys essentially dropped to the third round for developmental purposes. But, I mean, at this point, that could be something you want to go after if you are Cleveland, developing him over a couple of years. Technically, the Giants could be wanting to develop him over a couple of years. But the Browns could also want to go that free agent route. They could also want to go after the 2026 class. So I do think that there is a need for running back, and I think Cam Scatabo deserves to be a second-round pick. It's going to be the Chiefs, or it's going to be someone trading up here. So Cam Scatabo on the radar. It's crazy that Dylan Gabriel is getting this kind of love. I love Dylan Gabriel. You guys know this. He was my QB1 at the start of the year, which is like batshit crazy, but at the same time, it is what it is. Tate Ratledge is available, though. Tate Ratledge is a really good player. Let's see, is there a team that could be looking for a guard? Could see the Jaguars, but we've already traded up with them once. You can see the Patriots, since they have extra draft capital. I don't think the Raiders are going to be a great team, even though they have two third-round picks here. The Bears, I mean, we could get ballsy. I mean, the Bears, we could. We ended up trading back with Miami, right? Yeah, and we got Braden Swinson. We could move back up and then go after. Actually, I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. How did the Bears draft picks look like? So it is a little bit sparse, but if we could do this, I'd actually really like this. I'd really like the 72, like jumping up 11 spots, but then you guys get to end up jumping up 50. I think that's actually a solid deal for Indy. Maybe you can toss in a pick 231 as well, but I'm going to leave it as is. I think this is smart for the Bears. I think it's smart for the Colts. The Bears get to totally rebuild both their offensive and defensive lines respectively. And the Colts get to end up just continuing to shift down the board and get proper value. The Bears have moved up, and they're selecting one of the best guards in the entire class. So outside of when he had an injury, was creme de la creme of the entire class. I mean, this guy was a legitimate first-round quality player. He's experienced. You add him to Kelvin Banks, like, that's going to be a ridiculous interior offensive line. I love that for you guys. At number 62 for the Philadelphia Eagles, another team that I think could trade back with a team that's looking for Cam Scatabo. We took Mike Green in the first. Here at this point, I do think tight end is certainly on my radar. You got Mason Taylor here, who's the son of Jason Taylor, I think he's actually a Hall of Famer now. So pretty damn cool there. But I do think moving back might be more of something that suits you guys. Quarterback, don't think that you guys are in the market for that necessarily. Running back, no. You could try to develop an offensive tackle at this point. You got Armand Membu here, who I think is ridiculously talented. I think actually a team should try to move up from Membu if the Philadelphia Eagles don't. Membu might just be the move for the Eagles, though. You know what? Stoutland's going to come in and say, Membu's my guy. He's going to develop him to be the right tackle of the future. I know that there is a very strong proponent for Trevor Keegan as well as Tyler Steen. Those guys do not herald remotely close to in comparison to Armand Membu, in my opinion. I'm a fan of both of those guys. So Armand Membu is going to be the guard in the short run because I just don't believe in paying Mekhi Becton that type of price tag and end up getting a real quality player. Bears fans, if you wanted Membu, feel free to swap these two. But, at that point, I do think the Eagles would have made a different move. The Bears got themselves the highest floor guy. Membu is going to be a little more of a transition to guard. But also long-term tackle. At number 63 for the Chiefs, we took Trey Amos in the first round. Really good value. I do think defensive interior at this point could be the right move. You got Darius Alexander here who has a sky-high ceiling. But I do want to look at wide receiver because you guys are kind of lacking at that position after this year. Now, I do think guys will continue to sign on short-term contracts. That's just the way it rolls. But, oh, man. This class is kind of weak. I like Jack Besh a lot. Savion Williams is a really fun one, but I do think you can't really ignore. I'm going to go Darius Alexander at this point. This dude's been phenomenal this year. I haven't seen enough tape on him, but the tape I've seen is just ridiculous. This guy is a really good technician. People who I respect love him to death. So I'm going to go after Darius Alexander out of Toledo there. At 64 for the Detroit Lions, we already moved back once, and we ended up selecting Shamar Stewart. At this point, I do think you might want to look at another receiving weapon. Again, was talking about it there. Trey Harris fits this team really, really well. Could have went that way for Kansas City. But I do think adding him to the mix is something that's extremely harmless. At 65 for the Giants, you guys have gone Will Johnson and Jaden Higgins and traded for Will Levis for basically pennies on the dollar. So at this point, I think offensive line, or you could get quarterback competition in the building, are the two options at hand. I do think quarterback competition is not a bad idea at all. You could have Dable work with Milroe and Howard and see how that ends up working out. Like Milroe or Howard and Will Levis. I'd prefer to work with Milroe because I trust Brian Dable. But outside of that, I mean, you can't go wrong here. I think that this is the spot where teams will start feeling comfortable taking someone who might end up being a legit failure or a full-time backup. So I'm actually going to go after Jalen Milroe. And number 66 for the Chiefs, y'all know what's good. We ended up selecting Darius Alexander, but we're going to go Cam Scatabo at pick number 66. I mean, this guy's built to be a Chief. No disrespect to Isaiah Pacheco, who's a beast, but Cam Scatabo is also going to help keep the tires fresh, keep the tread on them. At 67 for the Browns, would have been nice to go after Jalen Milroe, develop him for a couple of years. We've gone after Abdul Carter and Jonas Savania so far, but I do think this is a good spot to go after someone like Will Howard, who's a really solid, consistent, maybe at worst, backup quarterback. And with Deshaun Watson's extension of his return, and also probably not going to be on the team anyway, this is someone that you could bring in to have a Jameis Winston kind of play. And I think he's a really good player. He is sitting around that 90 mark for me right now at 89 on my board. And so if he's at 89 and you're at 70 essentially, that's a good spot for a team that needs that kind of impact. We're going to go after Will Howard here and call it a day because I do think the quarterback class starts to get a little bit thinner. Beck has just decided to enter the transfer portal. Quinn Ewers, high probability he does as well. So you're pretty much down to Gabriel and Leonard. And I think that Will Howard he's above them for me at least. And so we'll go from there. So Vegas Raiders, remember you guys have Sam Darnold on the team. That's kind of like the simulation. You got Genty, Porter, and Darnold so far. You have 2 picks coming up. At this point, you got yourself your top corner. You got yourself your top running back. Let's look at the weapons right now for the receiving side of things. Is there anybody who really pops off to me? And I'm looking at Ricky White. He's right down the road. He's also someone who's going to be a great special teamer, 4 punt blocks on the year. I call him mini Marvin Harrison. Don't know why people aren't talking about him more, but he's going to be a really nifty weapon for you. He's going to be very similar to Tyler Scott, but at 68, that's the type of player you want to bring in the building. Patriots at 69, you went T-Mac via trade back and traded up for Josh Connerly. Have 2 picks this round as well. So you got yourself your left tackle and your wide receiver. I think at this point, you could try to address offensive line even further. Granted, I'm not seeing too many great options for it. You got Jack Nelson here who could be a true left tackle. And to be fair, I do think certain teams should be trying to move up for a true tackle here. I love Jack Nelson. He is someone who's a top 100 player for me. I think that teams should like him more, but I just trying to factor that into my analysis and just saying, hey, teams just aren't going to value him at that rate. But I'm looking at a team like the Saints could want him. Even the Jaguars could be in the market for a Jack Nelson, but it is what it is. I do think the Niners could be a dark horse team as well, looking for their tackle. Washington Commanders could be looking for some. But regardless of that, I do also think that we need to focus on the defensive line. Like y'all need some help there. Kyle Kennard's really good. I do think he's a little bit limited as a run defender. I think the guy who I'm excited for is Kamen Rucker. This dude's just the definition of consistency. I partially want him to go back to school to give Chapel Bill, speaking of the Patriots, one more great shot, but Kamen Rucker is going to be the pick there. Real quality edge rusher sitting there at 265. I mean, just someone who is going to be a plug and play kind of dude. At 70 for the Jaguars, who went Mason Graham and Azariah Thomas, completely retooled that defense. And let's talk about the offensive line. I love Charles Grant, would love to see him as an interior offensive line. I do not trust this team to develop guard talent. I'd rather have someone like Emory Jones, who's a tackle who can move to guard and be excited from there. Emory Jones is a top 100 player for me as a guard. So keep that in mind. Even with the struggles he's had, he is still a high quality guard. I do think wide receiver could be on the table. You got Jalen Knoll, who could be a nice deep threat there. Savion Williams has a bad drop rate, but he has a really good contested catch rate at above 70%. So there's just a lot of routes you can go. I don't think the interior offensive line class offers anything else that excites me. That's just me. But I also do think that, going after Charles Grant might be worth the investment. I'm still going to go after Emory Jones Jr. to play guard out of LSU. At 71 for the New Orleans Saints, we have gone after Michael Williams and Harold Fannin so far. A nice balance, I would say. At this point, I do think you could go defensive interior. I also think you can now invest in the offensive tackle spot with Blake Miller, who is extremely consistent and is a right tackle. You can move Trevor Penning wherever you want, but you get someone who's a lot more consistent. At 72 for the Indianapolis Colts, we did this via that trade back with the Bears. I feel a lot more comfortable at this point now going after an edge like Kyle Kennard, who's going to be a bit more of a technician, similar to what you got in the first round last year with Leatu Latu, minus a bit more of the 3-down ability. At 73 for the Las Vegas Raiders, we have gone after Ashton Genty, Darian Porter, Ricky White, as well as Sam Darnold. So at this point, you could go after Dylan Gabriel and have some extra oomph, a little bit more sizzle, but at the same time, you could also double dip in the running back room. There's some really good running backs here, but I do also think that you could look in the linebacking squad. I mean, you got Chris Paul, Bossa, Kaiser. You got really good players in this linebacking core for the third round. I don't think defensive line is something that you should be looking at. To be fair, safety, you will be probably re-signing them per you guys, but the value is really good. But you could even double dip at wide receiver. There's a lot of routes you can go. Tight end's the one position you don't need. I might be willing to double dip at running back, but you do have like Sincere McCormick in there, so I don't really feel the need to do that. When I start feeling conflicted like this, I start looking to trade back. And you got guys like Mason Taylor here who are solid tight ends as well. I do think with the left tackle on the board, the Niners are a team that I would love to move up for one. Is there another team that could be looking for a tackle? And I'm actually looking right now at the Cardinals as well as the Commanders. The Commanders have already moved up, but let's see which deal is best for the Raiders. So the Patriots, I don't see it being mutually beneficial to try to just instantly put Josh Connerly at guard. Would kind of defeat the purpose of what I did. And so you could look at the Cleveland Browns making a massive move up for a tackle. I don't think that would be beneficial to the team, but you got the Niners here. The Niners, it would be a very cheap trade, like probably 147, and you give them back like 208. So it would still be good because you guys are in a good position, but at the same time, you're also losing out on draft capital. The Commanders, I can see them being desperate, but they got nothing to offer. So that kind of sucks for them. And then the Cardinals do have good draft capital, and you could be flipping picks with them. And I think Monty might like that. You guys traded back and got that 118 from the Cincinnati Bengals, and you guys still ended up getting Derek Harmon out of the equation. But I do think continuing to invest in the offensive lines, not a bad idea. Getting a future right tackle right there, not a bad idea. So I'm actually going to flip these picks. So this is obviously a complete overspend. So I do think you guys could end up even with pick 141 in return, but maybe even pick 208 as well. But for the Raiders, you're moving up 21 spots and only moving back 5 and giving up pick number 208, which is kind of inconsequential. So we're going to make this trade there with the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are moving up, and the Cardinals are looking at the options given to them. And I think getting a high-quality future tackle in Jack Nelson to play that right side is worth that kind of spend. I think the offensive line is super key to invest in, and Jack Nelson is well worth the pick, and you get to steal him from the 49ers. Win-win-win. Pick number 74 for the Carolina Panthers. We've taken defense twice, Watts and Walker. We got to go to the offensive side just once. I have Bond returning in this simulation, air quotes. I do think having someone who's explosive like Tez Johnson could be worth it at 74. I do think Jack Besh as well could be a really good option. Xavier Restrepo is kind of like your reliable option. Restrepo makes a lot of sense here. He's not going to be like the most flashy player. He is going to be more of a slot weapon, but he is someone who will get open. He's extremely reliable. And Tez is a little bit more flashy. I think Tez could be, Tez could be air quote because he wasn't with him, Devontae Smithy. I love Tez. Tez I have higher. You know what? Let's stick to my board. Let's do it. Let's go Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson is one of my higher graded receivers as well. And number 75 for the San Francisco 49ers, we went after Will Campbell and JT Tuimoloau. And I think those are two great selections. I think at this point, you got to go after Mason Taylor and develop him for one more year under George Kittle, as he has another year left in him. Mason Taylor, the selection there. At number 76 for the Dallas Cowboys, we have taken Amarian Hampton and TJ Sanders. Amarian Hampton via trade back. And at this point, I think we need another weapon. And you got Restrepo here, but he's going to be a little more of a slot. I really like Jalen Noel. I really do. He's like just a very good separator. And where's Jalen Noel on my board? He's around a 70 grade for me. So he is literally a 70 grade. He's at 103 on my board. I really like Ty Felton too. There's some good players. I actually think Ty Felton could be worth it. Ty Felton did a good job. He definitely has certain areas where he's a little bit more lacking, but I don't know why is tackle listed as a need. That is certainly interesting to say the least. But you could also look at guard. There is a potential chance. I know you guys love Brett Hoffman, but if Jaden Roberts does declare, which I'm not sure where he's at right now mentally with coming out, but certainly always an option. You could look at some defensive back help, but I really do think the wide receiver route's the best way to go. And I like Jalen Noel. A lot of people like Jalen Noel. I'm going to go after Ty Felton because I have him higher. He just ended off the year with just one bad game with 3 drops, and I'm hoping to see him bounce back. At number 77 for the New England Patriots, we've gone T-Mac, Josh Connolly, Kamen Rucker, kind of a really, really good group of players. Again, having Ben Morrison return in this as well. Really good outcome for you guys, if I'm just being real here. Is there any team that I might want to trade with to send Jalen Milroe to, or excuse me, Joe Milton to? You know what? I could see the Rams get in on that. The Rams haven't gone quarterback, and I could totally see Sean McVay getting down for that. So we're going to trade with the Los Angeles Rams while we're here, because we're not going to have another pick. And the Rams are actually going to send pick 152 for Joe Milton. I think that's a really good deal. That way you guys get some extra draft capital. The Rams get their quarterback of the future because Joe Milton showed so much potential. And now we're back. So we got Joe Milton sent to the Los Angeles Rams. I think that's something that makes me feel very comfortable. At this point, we got edge, we got tackle, we got receiver. You could try to go after another quality offensive lineman like Charles Grant, but you guys are not developing guys well at the first place. So let's do what's actually good for your squad. I think a corner too is not a bad choice at this point. You guys have like Dalen Everett, who could be a really, really good get. But I'm talking about Quincy Riley as well, who does have 7 interceptions on his career. He is really good at breaking up the pass at the catch point. And I think that he's very underrated. Had a little bit of a down year, but he's a former sprinter as well. We're going to go Quincy Riley there at 77. 78 for the Vegas Raiders. We got Genty, Porter, Ricky White. Did that quick little trade back. So at this point, you could try to go another quarterback to back up your guy, but I honestly think that your backups are doing just okay. And at this point, this is where I'm going to see another linebacker coming off the board. And so Chris Paul and Jeffrey Bossa both have declared. Chris Paul, I have not watched him enough, if I'm going to be real, but he didn't pop off to me on first watch during games. Jeffrey Bossa did. I really like Jeffrey Bossa. He's a little bit on the lighter side, but he's someone who ended up being a guy who I wrote his name down before I ever knew who he was. So we're going to go after Jeffrey Bossa at 78. At 79 for the Washington Commanders, we've gone after Burden and Barron. Is there going to be an offensive tackle for us to take? There is. Ozzy Trapilo has had a very good year for Boston College. Very good year. And I think that he's worth a third-round pick to see if you can end up getting something out of him. So we're going to go with that. The Bills, we ended up doing this trade with Indianapolis, ended up getting Elic Iomaner out of the equation. And so you guys could be going an edge here because you got Ashton Gillette, Landon Jackson, Josiah Stewart, like really good choices. But at the same time, you do have the option of going a really good defensive back like Lathan Ransom and Kevin Winston. And I can't say no to Kevin Winston on the Bills. It's always been a dream fit of mine. Pick number 81 for the Bengals. We've gone Booker and Umami Ellen. I'm going to go back to that safety group because I love the safety group for this team. And I like Makuba, who's going to be super flexible all around. I mean, he's literally played everywhere this year, and he's been fantastic. He's like really taken a big step up after having a little bit of an underwhelming year the year before. At number 82 for the Seahawks, we ended up going after Cam Williams and Antoine Powell-Ryland. I'm going to go after that cornerback pick here. I'm going to go after Dalen Everett. He's physical. He's a nasty corner as well. Just needs to get his head around. Like, he ended up having a couple picks versus Texas, and it looks like he's improved noticeably, and I'm excited to see him continue to do so. For the Houston Texans at pick 83, we got Bo and Abuka. And now we're going to be going to the interior of the defensive line. Alfred Collins is a great choice. I know you guys like to stick close to the Houston area as it is. So we're going to go after Alfred Collins there. Real quality defensive interior player who's just a very high floor. 84 for the Denver Broncos. You got Warren and Johnson. We'll talk about a great duo. You could go back to the safety realm, and actually I'm probably going to do that. I got Lathan Ransom still here. This dude within the 15 yards of the line of scrimmage and at the goal line, probably the best safety in the whole entire class. Like really, really good. Pick number 85 for the Buccaneers. We've gone after Jahad Campbell as well as Jermari Harris, my number 36 player on my board. So at this point, I will be taking another swing on wide receiver. I'm going to go after Savion Williams here. After the catch, insane. 85% contested catch of this year, but 72 on his career. Somebody's got to take a chance on him, and he's really good after the catch as well. We're going to have it be the Bucs. Steelers, we had him trade up for Jalen Royals. We could have him trade back here, but we do need another boundary corner. You got Zy Alexander, who I really like, but I do think that he's going to be a little bit more of a safety prototype. Denzel Burke's a little bit too unathletic for what I'd want from the Steelers. Technically, same thing with Davison Igbinosun, but Igbinosun feels a little bit more AFC Northy in terms of being extremely physical, and he's someone who I want to test out and develop. So we're going to go after Davison Igbinosun. At 87 for the Rams, if you guys missed out on it, we ended up trading a pick for Joe Milton. So we got Ursery and Milton at this point. And now we can kind of just go after the best player available or even trade out. And I do think corner is a good move for this team. You got Max Hairston here, and actually I'd really like to keep him in blue there in LA. At number 88 for the Green Bay Packers, we've gone Ravel as well as Zerawaku. Really good group of guys. I do think that you could try to invest in a wide receiver at this point. Jack Besh is really solid. People love him to death. 6'2", 215. I could totally see him being a superstar for you guys in Green Bay. The Chargers, Colson Loveland, Gray Zabel, good group of guys. I could totally see you guys also going after a defensive lineman at this next pick. And with all the value on the board, I think actually going after Deon Walker and putting him in the same role as Kenneth Grant in your defense be pretty damn sick. At number 90 for the New Orleans Saints, we have gone after Michael Williams, Harold Fannin, and Blake Miller. I do think you guys will be still focusing on the defensive side. Daryl Jackson's returning, which breaks my heart, but DeMonte Capehart, speaking of, is such a good player. Like, he's at number 43 on my board. I think this guy is one of the most underrated players I've ever seen. Who gives a shit if the guy had, technically 5 pressures on the year? I mean, to be honest, he doesn't get used as a pass rusher enough. I think this guy is so underrated, and he's going to show out, I believe, at the Senior Bowl as well. Best bull rush in the country. I mean, this is a guy who's a collapser of the pocket, and that's worth it to me at 230 or at number 90. At number 91, we got the Baltimore Ravens. And we've gone after Milam and Sawyer. Good group of players. Really good group of players. I think going after a reliable receiver is pretty damn popular as well for you guys. I really like Sam Brown after the catch, but I just don't think you guys would be taking him. Kyron Lacy has too many potential issues. Evan Stewart's going back to school. Pat Bryant's somebody who I think has had a phenomenal year and would actually make a really good Baltimore Raven. And then you add on top of that, I'm forgetting his name, 4th round receiver that you guys drafted out of UNC last year, but you add that to the equation, you got your contested catch guy here in Pat Bryant. At number 92 for the Detroit Lions, we've gone Shamar Stewart, Trey Harris. Good group of players. We're going to go after Charles Grant now and develop him. I think it's worth it. Take the shot, see if he can end up being a tackle, but probably going to have him just be a really good interior offensive lineman. At number 93 for the Cleveland Browns, we've gone after Will Howard, Jonas Savania, and Abdul Carter, a really nice high floor trio. At this point, you could try to go after someone who's a little bit more defensive back type, and that would be Zy Alexander. But I also think that you guys could be going after a running back because you have really good ones on the board. And I love Quinshon Judkins. I hate that he fell this far. You guys know how much I love Quinshon Judkins, so we're going to take him here. At number 94 for the Philadelphia Eagles, we've gone after Membu and Mike Green. I think tight end's the next position you guys need to go after, and I freaking love Jake Brenningstool. I don't know why the grades are the way they are, but this dude is literally sitting there at number 44 on my board. I think this dude is a super stud. We're going to go with him to Philadelphia. At number 95 for the Chiefs, you got Darius Alexander, Trey Amos, and Cam Scatabo. Really good group of guys. I think Ashton Gillette right now is just ridiculous value to the point where I can't say no. So we're going to rush it in. Let's Landon Jackson. Landon Jackson's super fun. Gillette is technically a lot more productive, though. I'm going to go after Gillette. I like Jackson, but I'm going to go after Gillette in this equation. At 96 for the Jets, I think that you guys actually might be the perfect team to take Dylan Gabriel. A lot of potential. A ton of potential. And I want to see him shine. And whether you have Aaron Rodgers or not, I think at 96, it's worth taking the shot on him. At number 97 for the Vikings, we're taking running back all day. You took Donovan Jackson via trade back in the first. We're going to go after running back here in the second. Trey Henderson's perfect for you. Going to be able to hit those home run hits. Really good player to have. At 98 for the Miami Dolphins, I might trade out in this equation. But we've taken Tyleik Williams and Nick Eamon-Worry. We still got to go offensive line probably. And you got some very good ones here. I think these guys are kind of all worth that early day 3 selection. Like all of them. Jonah Monheim is the one exception, and people don't like to give him love anymore. But he's still a quality player, and he's like played every position on the offensive line. But I'm probably going to trade back here because with the running backs on the board, I want Devin Neal to go. I really do. And there's some other running backs that I really like Jordan James in this equation that I think need to go before the end of this draft. So we're going to have him go. And with the high quality back that is Devin Neal on the board, we're going to see the first team that really wants to move up for him get him. The Patriots, I think, could actually be a great spot for him. You take a lot of stress off Drake May at that point as well. The Jaguars are a dark horse team. I think actually I love the Patriots for this. You got the Browns as well. I think we just ended up drafting Quinshon to the Browns, but the Browns could be going for 2 at this point. The Vikings are another team that could try to double up at running back if they wanted to. I'm not going to do that. That's kind of stupid in my opinion. But we're going to go after the New England Patriots, and we're going to get a little bit ballsy here. And we're going to go interdivision, but at the same time, these are where interdivision trades do happen. I think pick 180 is very realistic. I think at this point, it's like a good spot as well where you guys don't have a trade. So the Patriots move up. And you guys have taken T-Mac, Quincy Riley, Connerly, Rucker. Go after Devin Neal as well, who's one of my favorite backs in the class. Maybe not a top-end athlete, but just really, really reliable. Indianapolis Colts at 99. We've gone after tight end, safety, and edge. Kind of like the Holy Trinity for you guys. But I think you guys actually could be looking for another backup running back who can hit home runs. And I love Jordan James, man. Outside of that last game versus Ohio State where he got hurt early, this guy's been unbelievably dominant. Like, unbelievably dominant. So, I think that that's someone who I think will be getting a little bit more love than normal. Feel free to change this if you want because it's so close to the end, but we're going to go Jordan James. At pick 100 for the Cincinnati Bengals, we've gone after edge, defensive back, and interior offensive line. I think that's a really good group of players to bring in. I'm going to look at defensive interior here to see if anybody is worth it. Not really getting that vibe. CJ West might be next for me. So we're going to leave that on the table right there. But man, shoot. There's some good players who I think that don't get enough love that I could show some love here. But we're going to leave it as is. We're going to look at potentially, you're good at quarterback, wide receiver. Tight end, you could go after somebody. Terrence Ferguson's the guy who I would probably try to target at this rate. I do think you could try to get actually some extra cornerback help as well. With Denzel Burke on the board, it's kind of hard to say no. Add him to that rotation and allow him to thrive. And then at number 101 with the Niners, you got Campbell, Tuimalau, and Taylor. Really good group of players. You could try to go after offensive line again. You got guys like Anthony Belton. That'd be a really, really fun guy to develop. Honestly, that's such a good player to develop. 6'6", 340, or 336. That's somebody worth taking. So we're going to go after Anthony Belton because he's a physical freak and his high-level wins are ridiculous. So that is going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. Show me the love that you always do. Leave your comments down below. See you on the far side. Peace.